Finger licking good.
Hi, I'm Johnny. This is Johnny Likes, the show where I talk about movies that I like. Today I'm talking about a vampire western that developed a cult following. Today, Johnny likes Near Dark.
Tell the world.
Near Dark was directed by Kathryn Bigelow and tells the story of Caleb, a young cowboy who falls for May, a girl passing through town who turns out to be a vampire. May and her makeshift vampire family are nomads who travel across the country in blacked-out vehicles, feeding wherever they can. They tentatively adopt Caleb as one of their own, as he struggles to come to terms with his new circumstances and what he must do in order to survive. Near Dark's one of those movies where not many people saw it upon its initial release, but the ones who did see it, it made a huge impression on. And eventually it did get kind of a following on home video. It was very much a word-of-mouth movie. It was unique. It wasn't really like any other vampire film that had come before. It was gritty, it was realistic, it was terrifying, and it was brutally violent. This is yet another one of those films that I saw once or twice in my teen and tween years that made a bit of an impression on me, and so I decided to give it a fresh watch. As I remembered it, the film had a pretty good ending and some very good scenes in it, but was overall kind of boring and a little bit slow. After giving it a review, I can say that my opinion on it has changed, but not in the ways that I thought it might have. So spoiler warning, I do talk about the ending and some of the kind of key scenes. I didn't find it boring or slow this time around, and I still found the ending to be visually stunning, but I overall still found it to be a bit of a letdown. The first hour or so of this film is absolutely fantastic, and the cinematography is stunning throughout. Adam Greenberg, the director of photography, did a spectacular job capturing the night and crafting some wonderful and memorable shots. The way that the night looked in this film was a work of art. The tint of green that the darkness had gave the night a sense of sickness and danger. That's where these creatures live, in the unknown and dangerous darkness. I thought that there was many shots that could have been frozen and hung in an art gallery. When Caleb first gets turned and is walking down the street, and you can see that there's a theater across the street and it's happened to be playing Aliens. Nice little nod. It's a nice little nod because the director Kathryn Bigelow was later married to James Cameron, who directed Aliens. Caleb feeling off May with the oil pumpers in the background. I thought this was pretty good symbolism as well, as kind of like the dead beating heart. Pretty much any shot from the bar scene. The vampires lit up on the hill from who knows what. And of course, Homer exploding into flames at the end. These are all classic and gorgeous shots. The film's story had me completely engaged up until Caleb returned home. I thought that until that point, the film was very, very good, but then all of a sudden, it wasn't. It made no sense to me that Caleb wouldn't realize that Jesse and Severin wouldn't immediately come after him and his family. Caleb obviously knew too much about them and what they had done. He also knew that they knew where he lived. It seemed to just be naivety and stupidity on his part. Like he was witness and accessory to multiple murders. What did he think was going to happen? That they were just going to forget and just move on with their lives? I didn't really buy that. Speaking of not buying it, I also didn't buy that a partial blood transfusion would be the cure for vampirism. Like, maybe for Caleb, but certainly not for May. I actually felt kind of betrayed by this, because up until this point, I thought that the film had been very smart and original, and that just seemed a little bit too lazy and obvious for me. That, like, a simple blood transfusion would cure them of their condition. Had none of them ever thought of that in the, previous 100 or so years that they had been kicking around? At least, we only know Jesse's that old. Personally, I would have preferred something like the transfusion not working on Caleb, and him retreating back to the vampire family, and then them going after Caleb's family, and him having to sacrifice himself to save his dad and sister, and everyone blows up in the sun, or something along those lines. I also thought that they could have hammered home Homer's jealousy of Caleb a little bit more. I really like the idea that Homer really did think of May as his older sister, and that was the role that she played for him. But I thought that they could have made that a little bit more clear to the viewer. I didn't think his feelings of how he truly cherished her were effectively portrayed to us. So enough about that. Let's talk about the good. This film has some excellent and original standout scenes, and I think they've all stood the test of time. The bar scene being the top of my list. It's still absolutely frightening and riveting. Bill Paxton getting to unleash his inner psycho was wild and terrifying.
You know what I said to you, Mama? You know what I said to her? I said, shh.
When this pack of killers comes into town with nothing but sadistic violence in mind, and no one can seemingly stop them, easily the scariest and my favorite scene in the film. To me, it very much felt like a western, where the gang of outlaws comes into the local saloon looking for trouble. This scene was also like the biggest showcase of supernatural abilities of the vampires. For the most part, they're portrayed more like serial killers than supernatural beings. That's one of the film's smartest choices, is to not highlight the romantic aspects of being a vampire, the eternal youth and never dying, but to instead show the less romantic side, always being on the wrong side of the law and having to feed off of human beings. Another standout scene that I really liked was the standoff with the cops in the motel. It was very cool seeing the bullet holes in the hotel turning the sunbeams into constant sources of danger. It was like the bullets themselves had a memory and were still dangerous despite being already past. Also, the old school sunglasses, or like welder glasses, whatever those were, that was pretty cool. I could see the influence of that scene on a couple of music videos. Closer by Nine Inch Nails. The glasses, and Korn's Freak on a Leash with all the sunbeams. It is a great scene, overall. The ending, with everyone bursting into flames and exploding, was also pretty powerful and memorable. I thought that everyone's performance in this was outstanding. Adrian Pasdar as Caleb brought just the right amount of youthful, restless energy combined with trepidation about what he was becoming, and it made for an understated and difficult performance. Jenny Wright was both innocent and threatening, as the beautiful but dangerous May, basically a rose incarnate. Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton were both very scary, as men who have both known and embraced violence. Joshua Miller played well beyond his years as Homer, the big man in a little man's body. Jeanette Goldstein as Diamondback was also pretty solid as the mother figure who just wants to keep the peace and who loves Jesse more than anything in the whole world. It was pretty cool that they decided to cast Henriksen, Paxton, and Goldstein together, as they had all been in Aliens the previous year. It makes perfect sense and was a stroke of genius, as they would have a built-in camaraderie that would be perfect for the kind of pack that they form. The score in this was done by Tangerine Dream, and I'm always a fan of their work, and this was no exception. They could have went with a more kind of classical Western score, but instead they went with the synthesizer-based work, and I thought it fit quite well. It gave it a modern feel, while being expansive and desolate, which paired very well with the wide open landscapes. Despite this movie looking tremendous, having great performances, being a new take on the vampire story, and having some very memorable and iconic scenes, it still fell apart narratively for me in the last act, and ultimately was kind of a letdown for me. and I was just kind of disappointed that they didn't stick the landing. It's still a very well done movie, and I would 100% recommend giving it a watch, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. So if you like this, you want some other serious vampire films, check out Let the Right One In, or Let Me In. I can't remember which is the American, which is the original. They're both pretty good. Check those out. The Habit. This one is kind of an indie and underrated one, and I saw it once and it has stuck with me 25 years later. And A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I did a review. It was one of my earlier ones. I think this is a very underrated vampire film. So, what did you guys think about Near Dark? Let me know your experience seeing it for the first time. What else do you guys want to hear me talk about? If you could let me know in the comments, that would be great. Before you click on out of here, if you could do me a favor and like and subscribe, that would be even more great. It is quick, free, and relatively painless. Plus, it helps me out. Thanks for watching me talk about movies for a little while, and you can tune in next time to see what else Johnny likes.
There's a kick, ain't it? Oh, shit! Holy shit! Yes! My life!